Speaking of nothing going on, pretty big news here. RFK, Robert F. Kennedy Jr., confirmed today as the Secretary of Health and Human Services. Apparently it was a narrow vote, and some Republicans, according to the Daily Caller, worried about his stance on the jab. I'm going to use code language so maybe we can get past some of the technological oligarchs and censor overlords. But nonetheless, he is confirmed. I'm curious, just your initial reaction. A lot of people voted for Trump for this to happen. And so this will be interesting to see how much follow through are we going to get, and particularly when it comes to big pharma and so on. We know all about food dyes and everything else, and that's wonderful, and make America healthy again. Okay, good. But the big push was on the medical tyranny front. That talk kind of diminished as Kennedy joined forces with Trump toward the end of the campaign. Not to say that that's not going to come back. I'm sure it's clear that Trump had a plan coming into this administration as to what he was going to do. He couldn't be doing all these things without a plan going in. So hats off to him for that. But anyway, your initial response, and what are you looking forward to, if anything?
Yeah, Andrew, I mean, we were pretty close to this. Some of our friends were significant in the MAHA movement and were actually communicating directly with RFK Jr. That big swath of people that went up for his confirmation was in large part from Southwest Florida to cover it, to be present in the hearing rooms and things like that. So, I think this is an instance where this is what the people wanted. It took the senators a minute to come around. I mean, we watched the initial run of his confirmation hearings, and some of it was just ridiculous, right? It's all the political grandstanding that you would expect. So RFK Jr., director of HHS, that's a good thing. But Andrew, being honest, what we have to be concerned about here is the shiny object thing. So RFK Jr. is the director of HHS. He's got things that he's going to knock out, right? The concern comes in who comes in under him. I would encourage everyone to look at the assistant secretary nominee for HHS. James O'Neill is a very interesting character. And if you look up Whitney Webb's work on James O'Neill, you'll see that that's a bad egg. He is interconnected with Big Pharma. He also has connections to Peter Thiel. He has been one to push for things like jab mandates or kind of this digital gulag world of digital ID tracking and health tracking and stuff like that. His chief of staff supposedly is very similar. So you have to be concerned, as you might be about Trump, where is the information even getting to him? Or what is he actually hearing? What are they telling him versus what's actually getting done? As much attention as people paid to RFK Jr.'s confirmation, which I think they should, they also need to pay very close attention to James O'Neill's confirmation and be vocal to ensure that he doesn't continue with the behavior that he's historically had.
It's a big deal who they surround themselves with. That's the lesson. That's one big lesson we learned last time around in the first Trump administration. Trump surrounded himself with so many swamp rats and creatures of the below, so to speak, that his presidency was effectively hijacked at the end of it. We certainly don't want that to happen this time. I'm curious what you think, though. I believe it was Lisa Murkowski, and let me confirm that really quickly. Well, actually, a few. The Senate, this is from the Daily Caller. The Senate confirmed RFK after a night of fierce debate and nomination. Obviously, Democrats are, some Democrats thought they might vote yes, but all the Democrats voted no. Surprise, surprise. But the Republican skepticism, Louisiana Senator Bill Cassidy, medical doctor, initially skeptical. Apparently, he had a meeting with J.D. Vance, Vice President Vance, and came around. But Lisa Murkowski, Alaska senator, GOP kind of, she announced she would vote yes to RFK in a tweet, but she still has reservations about his views on vaccines. Her quote is, "I continue to have concerns about Mr. Kennedy's views on vaccines and his selective interpretation of scientific studies, which initially caused my misgivings about his nomination." She goes on to say that vaccines have saved millions of lives, and I sought assurance that as HHS secretary, he would do nothing to make it difficult for people to take vaccines or discourage vaccination efforts. I'm just curious, why does the jab seem to be kind of the holy grail of a lot of what we're seeing coming out of not only DC, but global politics in general?
Yeah, Andrew, it's a great question. I think what you have to look at is where the bread is buttered, right? There's a lot of money that flows from big pharma and these vaccine manufacturers. But can we be honest about something when it comes to the word science? Because you've got doctors and people say, well, scientific studies. I don't know if people understand that when Dr. Fauci made the comment that the science is settled, that shows that he is an imbecile. Science is never settled. That's the entire point of science. So saying that there are scientific studies to support this, we could show scientific studies that support the opposite. What we need is for someone to say, why is all this stuff in these things? Why are these things necessary? Why is the vaccine schedule as aggressive as it is? And why are we seeing strange results when these things happen? Those are the questions that I would expect my senators and congresspeople and oversight committees to actually be asking. Instead, they decided to toe the line and do what their big pharma handlers told them to do. I mean, when RFK Jr. challenged Bernie Sanders on his big pharma money, as we did, one of our reels went viral. I was like, Bernie Sanders went full, let me be clear, right? Lying through his teeth. And so these are the things that I'd expect from senators, but of course they got to toe the line because their masters told them to.
Yeah, and it does seem to be the untouchable third rail, and it does show you how many tentacles big pharma has in all kinds of our lives.
Yes.
But and I will say this will be a good segue. It will be interesting to see what DOJ can uncover when it comes to things like big pharma, or will they even be allowed to look at it? Speaking of DOJ, see what I did there? Yeah. Breitbart has an article covering Mike Lee's recent appearance on the Alex Marlow show. Mike Lee asserts that government has been kidnapped effectively by the deep state. Tell us about it, RC.
Yeah, so this is an interesting one. Mike Lee has been pretty vocal about this and has a pretty well-honed argument. I think one of the things that we learned from this is that people use the blanket term deep state, and they think it's just the puppet masters that sit above. But there are layers to the deep state. There's the bureaucracy, which is an initial layer. Then there's the political class. And then once you get under that, you finally get to the people who are pulling the strings and moving the money. So what Trump learned in his first administration, when he said he was going to drain the swamp, is just how much that bureaucracy apparatus and that layer operates and what they can do to throw wrenches into things, followed very closely by the political class. We were just talking about the Senate and all that foolishness and time wasting. They can be highly effective at grinding the wheels to a halt. And what Mike Lee is trying to get done is say, look, this apparatus needs to be dismantled. DOJ needs to get in there. And Andrew, as we do the show, we're seeing this more and more every day. Now, I don't agree 100% with Elon Musk. I'm far from that. I am highly skeptical of anybody that will put a brain chip in me or want to do so, or to have satellite surveillance or digital ID. We've been very clear on that. That said, the thing that he is doing is what you would think private citizens in a self-governing society would want to do. They'd want to dig in and figure out where their money is going. And that seems to be another thing in the craw, like the third rail that you mentioned. With jabs, this seems to be another thing in Democrats' craw that they don't want to get into. And the obvious question then becomes, why not? And so Mike Lee is basically setting the stage for us to make that argument simply. Like, why wouldn't you want to pay attention to what's going on with your money?
All right, last story here. This from a website called dnyuz.com. The title, Seeking God or Peter Thiel in Silicon Valley. The gist of the article really is what is the spiritual influence of Silicon Valley, and it goes through quite a bit of Peter Thiel sharing what he believes is his faith at a birthday party for another billionaire investor. Now, RC, I want you to let us know what caught your eye about the article, but first, Give us a little background on Peter Thiel. Who is he? Why does he matter?
Yeah, Peter Thiel. So an eccentric homosexual billionaire. He was part of the PayPal mafia. So was Elon Musk. Two of them are actually very close. The PayPal mafia also included Reid Hoffman, David Sachs. Some of the people that you're seeing in and around the Trump administration right now were part of the original founding group of PayPal, and then all became billionaires in and of themselves. So Peter Thiel's success continued. He was an early investor in Facebook. And then he took it a step further with the development of the company Palantir. So Palantir's biggest client, surveillance-wise, data-wise, is the CIA. They actually service all 17 of those agencies, FBI, CIA, NSA. Data mining, data analysis, and surveillance of you is their primary business. And the government is their biggest client.
So, RC, what stuck out to you about this particular article about Peter Thiel and his faith and the Silicon Valley tech bros?
They're basically packaging up Christianity casually. So you can be a drive-by Christian, and it's okay to live in your sin. Now, you can't just have Jesus as your buddy in the back seat and think it's okay, or just be like, well, since I'm a Christian, you should tolerate my sin. When we did our story on what happened at St. John's Episcopal Church, with quote unquote Bishop Bud and her asking for mercy, it's like, okay, so let's be clear on something. Sin cannot live in the ecclesia. It is not welcome. Let me clarify this. At no point did we say that sinners are not welcome in the church or the ecclesia. They absolutely are. That's the whole point. But you're not going to be able to live in your sin if you want a relationship with Jesus or with the Father. It does not work that way. But be clear on how the culture has been established. I've long said this, having worked there on a day in, day out basis. What in essence has happened is that Revenge of the Nerds as a movie is now real life. These kids were marginalized. They were the geeks, the nerds in high school. People treated them bad. And now they have all the power, all the money, and they're extracting their pound of flesh. So since they don't have that moral compass and they felt marginalized, what happens when you're not rooted in the Father or the Son is that you believe you're God. And as people read this article, I want them to look closely at what's being said and what's not being said. In essence, what these people are doing is peddling a form of Gnosticism that says, well, look, we're godlike enough, and so Jesus is my pal in the backseat, and I can still kind of do what I want, but, go Jesus. That really stuck out to me, Andrew, and it's dangerous in so many ways because it's leading people down a path where they're not actually doing what Jesus told them that they needed to do.